Well, welcome to another episode of Correcting Conversations, a podcast dedicated to supporting individuals on their journey through the justice system. I'm your host, Stanley Frankart, and today we have an amazing conversation with Dr. Russell Ledet. He is a phenomenal individual. The list of accomplishments are insurmountable. I could go on and on and on about who this man is, the legacy that he's leaving, and the impact that he's having on the justice system. Currently, he is positioned as the triple resident of Indiana University, the first Black man to do that in the country, and is just continuing to pile up the accomplishments, working with justice involved youth through some very deep and therapeutic counseling and therapy with those young men. And he's doing that in Columbus, Ohio, and man continues to excel in all that he does. I would do no justice trying to introduce him. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring Dr. Ledet to the stage.
Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely, Dr. Ledet, man. It's an honor and a privilege. We're glad to have you here. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. It's been a good day so far. I spent some time with my daughter this morning, working on the SAT,
Okay.
and just praying with her and just having a conversation, making sure I'm taking care of home. And I just finished cooking breakfast with her, and now it's time to get to work.
That's real, man. That's real, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you, man. In the midst of all of that, being willing to join us today, man, with some good conversation, and talking a little bit about your journey and talking a little
Yep.
bit about the impact you're having, man, especially in the juvenile justice system.
Yep.
So tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about you, man. What's going on? Who is Dr. Ledet? Outside of all the accomplishments, man, who is Dr. Ledet, man?
Yeah, man. I'm a cool dude, man. I'm a smooth dude, man. I like to play with my Legos. I keep my Legos with me at all times, and just hang out with my kids and my wife, man. I don't do too much because I do a lot already in the career space. It's a lot of people pulling at me in a lot of different directions to do a lot of different things, and so um, when I'm not working, I'm trying to find my best way to just make my kids laugh or make them feel good or make them feel mentally healthy in a world that's kind of wild, So I'm always just trying to create space at home, the same way I try to create space in the real world.
That's good, man. That's powerful, man. That's a nugget right there for our listeners, especially those, who are actively involved in the criminal justice system. I think
Yeah,
sometimes just making space can be the
yeah.
most critical piece of truly being well, man. So appreciate you sharing that. Tell us a little bit about who you were before medicine, the person, not just your path, man.
Yeah, I think, growing up in Louisiana, like I was just an inquisitive kid, man. I always tell my kids that I was always the kid who loved to learn. Like I was addicted to learning. I was always inquisitive about Rome, about Antarctica, about the hills of Nepal, and like how do languages evolve over time in China and Japan and Korea. I just was I was always inquisitive about history and how history was told, and I think it's interesting now to look back and just realize that, like, that introspection, like the ability of me to just kind of reflect on like the world, and imagine things outside of like where I was from, was it was like a God-given distraction, man. In all honesty, it was like a God-given distraction because I could have easily just been been caught up in like the stuff that was going on in my neighborhood, and I'm thankful for that, like, that mental distraction, of like reading. I love reading. I've read probably over 3 to 4 thousand books at this point in my lifetime. Um, and I love playing with Legos. I just love stuff that keeps my mind just moving and challenging in new ways. And I've always been that way, even when I was a kid. And so, my mom recognized that early on. We were super broke, but what my mom was like very innovative. She worked at a nursing home, and she would like take some of the books from the nursing home and like bring them home and be like, all right, just read this. Like, and it'd be like random books. Like I remember one time she got me a book about like the tundra composition of Antarctica. And I was like 9 years old. I was like, what am I reading this for? But now looking back, like, I ended up becoming a chemist. So it
Mm,
it made perfect sense, in hindsight. Um, but it's crazy because like the inquisitiveness of me as a child is kind of right now the things that my kids dislike, but they starting to appreciate it. They like, okay, my dad is trying to set us up for like a really good future. So and that's just kind of how I am now. It's just really an inquisitive person, a lot of introspection, and always thinking about like what's the distraction and what should I actually be focusing on.
mhm,
I'm very big into staying away from distractions, even if everybody else is heading in that way, heading in that direction. Even if it's my colleagues heading in that direction, I try to steer clear and listen to I listen to God, and I listen to my ancestors in terms of like what's really important,
mhm.
um, versus like what's the news of the day. Because sometimes it's here one day and it's gone tomorrow. You know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but that's kind of who I am, man.
That's powerful, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, especially for our listeners and our viewers, you know, the gift of curiosity is what
Yeah,
kept you, in this constant learning stage, right? And being able to
yeah,
really truly keep your mind occupied and not get distracted, if you will, by the things that sometimes I think are a vortex that suck
yeah,
us in, whether it be
yeah,
social media, whether it be the hype of the culture for folks that are just as involved. Maybe it's, everybody in your neighborhood did this. And it sounds like
yeah,
all of those trajectories around you, the thing that kept you was your willingness
yeah,
to be curious, to
yeah,
to be somebody who's inquisitive and who wants to learn more and say, you know what? I don't think that's the path for me. And
yeah,
man, what an amazing nugget right there that you're passing on not only now to your kids, but to all the individuals that you're having an impact on through your various accomplishments and the things that you're doing in the community, man. That's a powerful statement there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
talk
No,
to me a little bit. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I think it's important to, especially for the justice involved folks, like, you know, I've realized over time, and I've done a good bit of reentry work with folks who were, trying to reenter society after justice involvement, um, as well as in youth correctional settings where like they haven't had enough time with someone who truly was curious about what they were curious about.
Yeah,
Because I realize when you spend time with these kids or even the adults who've been involved in it, they always shock when you like, nah, like, what do you think about? Like, what do you dream about? Or, like, what? And some of the stuff that they come up with, and like, man, I always thought I would be weird if I said that out loud. You know,
yeah.
it's like, nah, man, like that's really curious stuff. Like, it's really interesting, and like they got people who do that for a living. Who
Come
talk about.
on.
I remember one kid told me. He was doing like a 4-year bid, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I always think about like how were the pyramids in Egypt built?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, they have archaeologists, they have people who like they do that for a living." He was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna get you a book. Like you could." And the kid was like shocked by the book. He was like, "Man, this is the greatest gift ever." And I was thinking in my head, like, man, when that kid was 12, 13 years old, somebody would have just entertained that idea of like like this curiosity you have about the pyramids. Like we've been having this curiosity for hundreds of years about like how did they build these pyramids.
Come
How
on.
did they move these big blocks? Like, how did they do this? They ain't had no cranes. Like, they ain't had no planes. They ain't had no trains. They ain't had none of this, and they still built it. So, that curiosity piece is definitely something that I bring, to every correctional, facility I go in, and even in the reentry space, because you might be the first person to ask those kinds of questions where they don't feel weird. They don't
Come on.
feel like it's an outcast type deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's real. That's super powerful. And honestly, man, it's a life changing A simple question, a life changing
Yeah.
trajectory. You
Yep.
know, and I think
Yep.
for our correctional professionals and our family at the American Correctional Association, I think that's a nugget there. Just being curious enough to say, what do you dream about?
Yeah.
And regardless of the setting, we all got them, right? We all got dreams. We all got aspirations, regardless of the setting. So, what a powerful
Yeah.
nugget! What a powerful nugget! What role do you think? Because you hit something that was like, I think, critical, and I think you said it and passed by it, but I think it's something that we need to visit because I think it's powerful. What role do
Yeah.
you think that like shame plays in incarceration and reentry?
Yeah, man, that's a powerful question, man. When I think about shame, it's like a silent sentence, man. It's a
Mm,
silent sentence. So there's the loud sentence, which is the physical time that you're gonna spend in wherever you're gonna be, and then there's the quiet, silent sentence that like people carry it long after the bars are gone. And
right.
if it's not addressed, like it delays true freedom, man. So like you
Mm,
sure you are physically free, but the mental freedom aspect requires a lot more work. And shame is one of those things that requires it requires the people who are surrounding those folks who are in justice involved to understand language that fosters shame as opposed to progress you know
mm,
um I oftentimes when I'm in youth facilities and I talk with staff, I tell them, listen to how I talk to these children. Like just pay attention not to what I say, but to the tone I use, to the
mm.
temperament that I use, to the facial expressions that I don't use, um to my hand placement, to how calm I am when I come up to them, to how quiet I am sometimes when I say things that maybe you don't think is intimate, but giving them reassurance quietly gives them reassurance loudly. Like sometimes kids will ask questions and I'll come up to them and be like, listen, when you respond to this question, like make sure you mention it. And then they when they answer the question, they answer with so much more confidence and boldness, right? And that kind of pushes shame out of the way because for the first time, somebody is truly correcting them. Somebody is truly
Mhm.
rebuilding them. And language is so important. Like people don't realize that it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one way to be like, hey, you need to hurry up and eat your food. It's another thing to say, I think it's really important for us to move quickly because we have other things on our schedule. Because then
Come on.
everyone understands what's important, right? One feels like this forced expression, um, and almost to some degree feels like you feel like cattle, and another one
Yeah.
allows you to feel human, right? And
Come
and
on.
I always tell people like when you're dealing with people in an already um boxed in setting, the last thing you want to do is make them feel like an animal. You
Yeah.
know, you want to make them feel like, no, listen, I know you in here because you made a mistake or you did something terrible, but that doesn't mean that I have to stop treating you as a human.
Come on.
And that's incredibly important, especially when we talk about shame, because shame is a silent sentence. Like it's a sentence.
Yeah.
And you go and not only is the shame like the start of the sentence is not the moment you get your sentence from the judge. It's well before that because you oftentimes when you come to the realization of the wrongs that you've done, and how the system is likely going to come down on you, you already starting to feel shame, and all the system really does is just reinforces it, right?
Hmm.
Like, and and
Yeah.
and now you carry that shame beyond your day of freedom.
Hmm.
You finish your estimated out date, you get past your estimated out date, and now you out of there, you off probation or you off parole or whatever, and you still dealing with shame because there's also societal factors too, right? You got the people. I always talk about the guys when I deal with reentry who got on ankle monitors. They got the boxes on, right? And I always talk to them because I'm like, what does it feel like for you to go in a grocery store? What
Mm.
does it feel like for you to go to a barbershop? You know,
Yeah.
and then what does it feel like for you to be in this room with me? And they're like, man, honestly, if you didn't say anything, I don't even think you noticed that box.
That's great.
and and part of it is because like there's a healthy communication, right? Like, there's this healthy exchange that feels human, and there's remarkable change that can happen as a function of trying to wipe away and break down some of that shame and really reinforce the human aspect of the individual. Not the
Mhm.
crime is oftentimes the first thing people want to talk about, and I'm like, nah, man, it's still a human, man. A lot of people would be locked up if we caught everybody for everything that they did.
Come on. That's so real, so powerful, man. And you're right, the humanness of the individual, I think, is the most critical piece, right? Reestablishing and rebuilding identity. That helps to begin what we call a healing process. Because, like you said, that shame, that sense of guilt, that sense of remorse, those things start way before we get in front
Hmm.
of a judge. And they carry on long after we've been, integrated back to society. We've completed successfully parole or probation. And I love that you bring up, how do you feel when you walk into a grocery store? Because I remember my first encounter. I did 10 years justice involved, from a juvenile to an adult, got bonded over to the adult system. And I remember walking into Walmart for the first time as an adult and just being overwhelmed
Hmm.
because I was used to controlled movements, right? People moved a certain direction on the yard. And I walk into Walmart, kids running this way, mama's going this way. And I'm like, man, this is too much. And then,
Hmm.
the element of, it feels like in layman's terms, we call it the scarlet F. It feels
Hmm.
like people automatically look at you and say, oh man, he must have just came home from prison, right?
Hmm.
And it's an internal thing, probably from the shame that we carry, or the guilt that we carry, or the sense of remorse, whatever it may be. But I think those things, when we walk into spaces, they show up before we do. You know what I mean? Like most
Yeah.
times out of
Yeah.
time, nine
Yeah.
times out of ten, those feelings of remorse, those feelings of shame,
Yeah.
those feelings of condemnation, if you will, they show up in that space
Yep.
before we do. And
Yep.
sometimes that's because of collateral consequences.
Yep.
Those things that are, societal factors, the stigma associated with folks who are re-entering society. Like those are all elements that people wear every single day stepping into spaces, being
Yep.
justice involved. And so to be able to come into a space where, yeah, I do got the big old black box on my ankle, but I'm
Yeah.
still seen as Stan,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Not as the dude who has the black box on his ankle. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure that's empowering. I'm sure that's liberating, man. And that's critical work. And I think that translates and that transfers into those correctional environments. Like you said, when you're
Yeah.
talking about how you engage with the young folks down in Columbus, when you go into the correctional setting and you tell, hey, just watch how I interact. Because one of the
Yeah.
things that we forget in communication, and this is for leaders across the board, whether it's somebody in the justice system, prosecutors, judges, communication comes in kind of two diaphragms. We have low context cultures and we have high context cultures. We live in America, we live in a low context culture by nature, right? Where
Hmm.
where where we just try to give direct, explicit communication. Do this, and this is what and sometimes that's helpful, right? Sometimes that's helpful, but we're dealing in a society and in a culture where it's high context, right?
Hmm.
Coming from where we come from, being down in Louisiana, growing up in poverty, it was already understood, right? Like, hey, I know Aunt Susie up the road, she got the Kool-Aid, right? I know
Yeah.
Uncle
Yeah.
Jim, if I call him over, he gonna throw down on the grill. You know what I'm saying? He he
Yeah.
he not
Yeah.
afford no, but hey, he can throw down on the grill, right? Because it's a
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
context kind of relationship. And that's the environment of what it looks like when we're justice involved. Like when I'm in prison, I know who to go to who can make a
Yep.
side break. I know who can, whip up a
Yep.
nice little thing, cake. I know
Yep.
somebody who, got the store, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It's already understood kind of those elements. And I think that's the approach that you're taking is there's a high context that's already brought into the space because of your awareness of the
Yep.
situation and the individuals. And that's what makes those transactions, those interactions, if you will, so powerful.
Yeah.
So I
I think
appreciate
I
that
think to
wisdom.
that point, Stan, um, because I do now. I'm doing work across Ohio, not just in Columbus. I'm also in I was in Xenia, also in New Lebanon, um, and I guess the reason why this work has expanded and likely will continue to expand is I never forget I was walking on the yard at Circleville, which is it's a youth Department of Youth Services facilities, a long-term facility. This is post-adjudication. And I remember one of the individuals that we were walking with, like I had just finished interacting with a bunch of youth, and this is my first time ever interacting with them, like ever, ever, ever. I walk in there, and these kids sit down for like an hour and just like soak up this information. Like they just like, you know what I'm saying? They like, bro, this dude blowing my mind. And then
Yeah.
we walk out, and she was like, RJ, like, what is it? Like, I just want to know, like, how did you do that? Like,
Mm,
and I was like, I got a unique set of skills.
yeah.
I was like, I come from where they come from.
Mhm.
But then I went and got all this knowledge.
Come on.
So the ability to apply all this like high level knowledge in a way that like them kids can understand it is
That's a gift.
it's like translating Mandarin into English, man. Like it's because
Come on.
you can infuse what the barbershop would understand
Yeah.
in a way that like like a lot of my colleagues just couldn't pull up and say that. Like they
That's
couldn't
real.
take this really high level academic clinical knowledge and then break it down into a language that we understand and
Yeah.
in a way that like nobody's really explained it to us because
Come on.
most of the people trying to explain the information to us they ain't from where we from. So they don't
That's real.
understand the things that are tick us in the wrong way, but also the things that are tick us in the right way. And
Yes,
and
sir.
the presentation is important too. You know what I'm saying? Every time
Yeah.
I walk into one of these facilities, the first thing they say is like, I'm like, what do you all think I am? Who do you all think I am? They're like, you probably was previously a drug dealer and now you come in here to encourage us, or you a mechanic, or you used to be a basketball player or a football player, because I'm really tall and I'm big. And they was just like, yeah, for sure. And I'm like, nah, actually, I'm a doctor and a scientist. And they like, man, you lying, bro. Like this is gas. This is gas. You capping. You straight capping. Like that's what you doing. And I'm like, nah, that's not, this ain't a cap. Like I'm not capping. This is real.
Yeah.
But
Come
but
on.
don't get it twisted. I know the difference between a quarter key and a key. Like
Come on.
I'm like, don't get it twisted. I know what a
So,
QP is. Don't and they was like,
so,
whoa, hold up. And now they confused, but at the same time they
yeah.
intrigued,
Come on.
and I think when it comes down to translation of knowledge, but also translation of culture as a means as a conduit or a highway to transforming and really delivering knowledge, it's almost imperative that you have those skills. If
Yeah.
you can't put it in a language that the folks in an incarcerated setting can understand, then you basically gonna tell them what they've been hearing since day one.
Yeah.
And it's not effective. Like let's just call it what it is. It's not effective.
That's
And so
real.
I think that's the part of I think the biggest blessing, man, in my career has been coming from where I come from, being through what I've been through, especially the military, helping me to just be structured and organized and methodical. But also like growing up in the hood, man, and then going to medical school was like two doses of a medication that's just like they don't usually mix together. You know what
That's
I'm
real.
saying? But if you
Yeah.
can figure out how to mix them just right, you end up with a potion that's dangerous. Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
No
You know
doubt.
what I'm
No
saying? Because
doubt.
you can go from a boardroom to like the only room, and
Come on.
in either sense, you know what I'm saying? You could really you could connect the dots. You know what I'm saying?
That's
You could
real.
connect the
That's
dots.
real.
So
That's good. That's really powerful, man. And honestly, I think that is the gift, right? To be able to
yeah,
translate, I like to say translate hieroglyphics, right? The,
Yeah.
the 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 writing that's on the wall, but ain't nobody really took the time to break it down into terms that we can understand.
Yeah.
Walking into settings and into rooms where people want the knowledge, they want the information. That's what you encounter that circuit. They soaking it up like sponges, right?
Yeah,
Because they
they like,
want the
bruh.
knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. But then you being able to be tactful and gifted and skillful
Yeah.
enough to say, I already am walking into a room that's prepared for this
Yep.
information. Now
Yep.
it's just my ability to communicate it in a way where it lands on the fertile soil of their
Yep.
minds. And what a powerful gift that is. Because, like you said, most folks can't do that, right?
Nah,
Academic and clinical language, we sometimes just regurgitate what we memorized, right?
it don't work.
And that don't work exactly. So that's powerful, man. And I think you're touching on a point that, like, as the state of corrections is beginning to open up, like, what is the next step? We've reduced recidivism. We have the data on how to do that well. We know what to do in order to curtail reoffenses and things like that.
Hmm.
Moving into a space of where they're starting to focus on what they're defining as the social determinants of health and looking at
Yeah.
that through the lens, right? Through the lens of the person. Because
Yeah.
the social determinants of health for Stan probably looks different than it does for Jimmy. You know what I'm saying? And,
Yep.
and Jimmy may have a support network where Stan doesn't. So that environment that Jimmy's going back to looks better than Stan's environment. So what do
Yeah.
we need to do to adjust Stan's environment to make sure he's set up for success? And it sounds like you're already embracing this kind of theos in the way that you
Yeah.
connect and communicate with the individuals that are justice involved in navigating this space of coming home from incarceration. So talk to me a little bit about, like, what's that looking like as far
Yeah.
as your trajectory of how you're
Yeah.
beginning to embrace this theos.
Yeah, man. I think for me, it is a mixture of not discounting the pedagogy and the theories that have been around for a while with regards to um, what social determinants of health are, what adverse childhood experiences are, what trauma is and what trauma is not, um, um, and what acute stress is and what it's not. But I also think, to my point earlier, I think it's about infusing familiarity and then just putting that pedagogy in there, and they don't even know.
Mhm.
Like, for
Come on.
instance, um, with the adults as well as with the youth, I always use this example of a Ferrari. So I always tell them, I'm like, listen, your brain is a Ferrari. You can say what you want. Your brain is a Ferrari. It's a really expensive Ferrari. It's like a high end Ferrari. Um, but if you take that Ferrari and you park it on the south side of X neighborhood
Mhm.
where you already know crime is high and the likelihood of somebody vandalizing it is high. Um, the equating component to you parking it there is the conversations that you have, the people you hang out with, the things that you think about oftentimes. If you park it there, you know what to expect. You already know what time it is. You know what time it is,
For
right?
sure.
But then if you take that exact same Ferrari and you park it somewhere else, let's say in a middle class, maybe high class neighborhood, in terms of your conversations, who you surround yourself around, what are you thinking about? Oftentimes you talk to people who are re-entering society who done did 5, 10 year bids and they like, man, I read books I never thought I would read. Um,
Hmm.
I spend time having conversations with people about I'm thinking deeper.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, right? So um that's parking it in a good neighborhood. And they like, oh yeah, no, I want to park it in the good neighborhood. I'm like, right. I'm like, right. I'm like, so if you think of your brain as a Ferrari, you need to listen to what you're thinking about, listen to the conversations you're having, and then tell me, where are you parking it at? Where are you parking it at?
Come on. Come on.
Um, and really from a from a pedagogy standpoint, the theory standpoint, all I'm really talking about is relativity
Come on.
and thought patterns, right? Like
Yep.
relativity and thought
Yep.
patterns and habits, right? Like that's all I'm really talking about. And they don't know that. Like they don't,
No doubt.
but it makes sense. It makes sense because all we talking about is an expensive car. And we talking about neighborhoods that they really familiar with and neighborhoods they never really get a chance to peruse.
Come on.
And the fact that man, I've seen kids, bro, on the unit. I'm talking about after a session is over, and they
Yeah.
like they'll you could listen to them from a distance, and they'll be like, "Nah, we can't have that conversation. I'm not parking my Ferrari over there." And
Come
and
on.
and, and to hear the kids say that, I'm
Come
like,
on.
oh yeah, like they don't
They
even know
get
what
it.
they're practicing right now. They don't know what they're practicing right now,
Come
but
on.
they do know what they're practicing right now because
Yeah.
it's in a way that they can digest it, right? And so I think when we talk about how do we effectively take um these theories, the training, the education, stuff that has been proven to work, and put it in a digestible way to address things like experiences, which is I like to call social determinants of health and adverse childhood experiences, just really experiences that either the system has placed on an individual, or just that's just what society has allowed for this person to experience. I think the way we address it is by creating digestible information,
Mm.
and that part is harder to do because you would have to first accept that those people's version of reality is valid and is
Yeah.
valuable,
Come on.
right? Like I tell people, with as much as I've accomplished, I've been on Good Morning America and the Steve Harvey show, like People Magazine, BBC, all this other stuff, right? um I always tell all these really high class people, I'm like, listen, the most valuable entity in my life is the hood I come from.
Come
They're
on.
like, "What? Nah, it ain't like this celebrity you mad or that." And I'm like, nah, nah.
It's real.
And the reason why is because like we speak the same language. Like they speak the same experiential language. They speak the same cultural language. Um, and not only that, like I know that they are worried about my root. They not worried about the
Yeah.
leaves or the fruit. They worried about the origin, the root, right?
Come on.
Like where they trying to water the root. They not trying to pull the fruit off the tree. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of these folks who are just as involved, it's about helping them to frame how where they are coming from is valuable. Like
Come on.
sometimes you can have a tool in your hand, like an Allen wrench, and if you use it improperly, you won't be able to use it
That's
appropriately. But once you
yeah.
teach somebody how to use it appropriately and you let them know that, like, nah, you could get a lot of wisdom from your barber.
Yeah.
Instead of you sitting there talking to him about what happened at the strip club last night, ask him about how he run his business. Like,
Come
so
on.
now all of a sudden you got a mentor in your barber. You're gonna see your barber every week or every 2 weeks anyway.
Yeah.
Your pastor can help you learn how to manage finances, but also how to mend relationships with your family, which is so important because now all of a sudden you have a network. You got people
Come
in
on.
your network who willing to help you build when you come home, right? Um,
Yeah.
you can learn how to till the ground in your backyard and just put a few vegetables out there, and now all of a sudden you could create a space for you to meditate. You can have some
Come
deep
on.
breathing, right? Like in just your backyard, even in the projects.
Yeah.
My grandmother had a garden in every last project she lived in.
Come on.
So don't sit up here and tell me that just because you live in a project you can't have a garden. And I would
That's
always ask
real.
my grandma, like, grandma, why you always out here? She was like, oh, because this is where I can hear God at. And
Mm.
so, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
you could take these communities that we come from, and all of a sudden, once you give people the knowledge, they're like, hold on, the community I come from is rich. Like
Come on.
is I'm gonna give you an example, but I know I'm running long, but I gotta say this.
No, you're all right.
When I was in medical school, I went to medical school in New Orleans, right? And I lived in Gretna, but I lived in the hood in Gretna. Now, to give you some context, I didn't have to live there, but I wanted to live there. We lived in a shotgun house right behind the church that I went to. And you'll understand this, but the pastor of that church, because we went to that church, he gave me a key. He was like, listen, you can study in this church whenever you want. You can sit in the back of
Man.
the church, the internet work, the water work. They got some food in the refrigerator. When you get worried, go to the altar, go pray. Right? Like all these things, you got a key. Just lock it up whenever you're done. And literally just
Man.
walk down the sidewalk and go home. So now all of a sudden, you don't gotta fall asleep at the wheel studying at somebody's library and mess around
Come on.
getting into a wreck going across the Mississippi River to try to get home. Not only that,
Yeah.
when we moved there, I'm going to school, my wife going to work. We got to figure out how to get these babies on on the bus. So the lady
Yeah.
across the street was like, "Listen, I noticed you be rushing in the morning. I got to bring my kids to the bus stop. I'll just bring your kids to the bus stop. Don't even worry about it." Come a little
Man.
while later, my hair got longer. She like, "Baby, I could braid your hair. Don't worry about it." Now her hands were strong, but she could tighten up my hair, right? You know,
Yeah.
and we all went to church together. And then one of my friends, bro, we was in medical school together. His dad came down from Georgia, and me and his son was studying together at the church. And his dad came in town, so he came to visit his son with me. And he came by my house and he was like, "RJ, I just gotta ask you, why the hell you living in this neighborhood?"
Mm.
And I said, "Bro, it's the richest neighborhood I ever lived in."
Man.
He was like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you see that lady right there? She braid my hair and make sure that my kids get prayed over before they go to school and they get on the bus. This
Come on.
lady right here give us fruits out of her backyard and pecan so we can make pecan candy. This church right here, they got food, they got running water, they got AC, they got a copier, they got a printer, and they got an altar for us to pray, and we got the keys. And
Come
everybody
on.
in this neighborhood, and my barber is right over there." I
Come
said,
on.
the grocery store around the corner, and I know the lady in the grocery store. So every once in a while, she throw an extra peach or an extra apple in my bag and don't even say that. So
Come
he
on.
was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you don't understand. I done
Yeah.
figured out that this is a rich. I'm wealthy here. I'm
Yeah.
wealthy. It don't
Come
seem
on.
like it, but I'm wealthy." And so for
Yeah.
these, for folks who coming home, I'm like, "Nah, let me teach you how to see the wealth and where you come from. It ain't all
Come on.
bad. It ain't
Come
all
on.
negative. Like it ain't all guns blazing. Like this ain't the Wild Wild West in every hood. Some
Yeah.
hoods you just don't know how to leverage the tools you got."
That's real. That's a nugget right there, man. And I'm so glad you bring that up because to be really transparent, I think that's how people who like myself have come home, that's how they redeem the reintegration process is by
Yep.
leveraging those
Yep.
resource rich environments. Yet they might not
Yep.
have capital
Mm-mm.
resources, but they have human resources, they
Yep.
have relational resources. I mean, literally, that is what changed the trajectory for the people that are around me, is looking at, everybody who was connected to us was, dope boys growing up.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the mindset is, hey, this is our business, this is what we do. But then you transfer or translate that hustle and drive into a viable career, right?
Yep.
So say you want to be a multipreneur, right? You want to be you want to develop
Mm.
multiple businesses. You can do that legally without worrying about the feds kicking in your door, right?
Yep.
You can
Yep.
go and get a line of credit and
Yeah.
start flipping houses if that's what you want to do and be a real estate mogul, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
there's so many vehicles and who would have ever thought coming home that knowledge that we learn from sitting in trap houses, bagging up
Yep.
dopes on scales, and then transferring that to, okay, we have to weigh the pros and cons. We have to understand what's going to make this market successful, what's going to make this
Yep.
market not successful, because we do all of those analysis. Even though it's in a different context, we do those same market analysis when we're
Yep.
selling drugs in the hood,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
know little bro up the road the feds. We know he don't wore the wire a couple of times on a couple of. We ain't messing around over there, right?
Nah. Uh-uh.
You know
Can't
what
go
I'm
over
saying?
there.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? We ain't messing around up that street. But bro over here, we know he keep a couple bangers over there. So we gonna slide on,
Yep.
and we do this market analysis, different terminology, but it's the same concept in the business world. It just looks different. And so, man, I appreciate you sharing that perspective piece is so powerful. Well, man, I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I do got a couple of closing questions for you
Yeah.
because you touched on so much knowledge and wisdom. You talked about relatability, contextualizing concepts, being able to really bring the humanity into what it looks like to work with folks that are justice involved, even for folks that
Yeah.
are on the other side of the justice system, right? I think about walking into a courtroom and sometimes I forget the humanness of the judge and the
Yep.
humanness of the prosecutor, right? And so that humanity element is such a critical piece. You talked about really being able to dig to your roots and find those connecting points to say, you talked about being at school and then pastor at the church giving you the keys and finding those resources where you're rooted. And I think that's a powerful piece. In
Mhm.
closing, I want you to talk about some of the mental health and wellness practices that keep you grounded today.
Yeah, man. One of them is golfing, bro. I've been in the golf course twice this week.
Come on.
Probably gonna go again. I'm probably gonna go again at lunchtime today. Because it's an opportunity, man, for me to just check out,
Yeah,
and not worry about the next endeavor, to talk about the next whatever. Like I get to just be present, be where my feet are. So that's one. I meditate. Um, Oftentimes music-based meditation helps me. And so I do it with any session I have ever done with adults or with children. Everyone meditates, including the people who are observing. Everybody meditates. So we meditate. And then the other thing is too, man, is I have realized over time, oh, and I can't forget therapy, of course. If you can afford therapy, go to therapy. If you're watching this and you could go, your insurance company can help you with therapy too. A lot of people don't know that, but you can get therapy through your health insurance. Um, but the last one is that, man, like I have come to realize that I'm only gonna be here for a certain amount of time, and so I can only do so much. I can't accomplish everything that I want to accomplish in my lifetime. I'm not going to be able to do that. Um, I'm also not going to be able to save the world. I'm just hopefully going to be able to make a positive impact. So there is that. Um, and I sit with that. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think it's sometimes a difficult thing to wrestle with the idea that you're not going to accomplish everything you put your hands towards. And things take time. Like they take time. Be patient. Embrace the suck, as we say in the military. Embrace the
yeah,
suck. It take a while. It take a while. Be patient. Take your time. And pray, man. I pray a lot. Spend a lot of time asking God, asking my ancestors, like, what's right, what's wrong, what's good for me,
mhm,
what's not good for me. Just because it's a good opportunity don't mean it's a good opportunity for me. You know, And so that's kind of what keeps me grounded. That's what keeps my head in the right headspace. And I think every once in a while, man, I get asked to be on podcasts like these and many others. Oftentimes, I think this is cathartic, man. It's cathartic because it's an opportunity to get off my chest why I'm doing what I'm doing, and how
come
I
on.
think what I'm doing is helpful. And so I appreciate you for having me on your platform, man, and thinking, highly enough of me to bring me on this podcast. Also my partner in crime, Judge Stroud. I appreciate you having her on.
Yeah,
I don't think I would have been able to get into this justice involved space and as deep as I am without her.
yeah,
Also got a shout out director Amy Ast and assistant director Trim. Man, that's two people who believed in me early on, like very, very, very early on, and trusted me uh with a lot of support to do this work that I'm doing. And so I wouldn't be able to do anything I'm doing without the support, and obviously the training program that I'm in now to teach me what I know about mental health, what I know about psychiatry, what I know about pediatrics, and how I am, to be who I am today.
that's real, man. Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate you, Dr. Ledet, being willing to jump on, share a little bit of context of why you do what you do. And yeah, absolutely phenomenal people along the journey. I'm sure it was your curiosity that hooked them in and believed in you because man, you are a treasure chest of wisdom. And I love the way that you explore the world, man, because it's a
No.
gift. It really is, man. And man, I appreciate you sharing some nuggets along the journey. So, in that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe, follow, like. Big shout out to the American Correctional Association for supporting these endeavors and these conversations. And until next time, let's continue to take this journey one step at a time.